For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. Hiking with a friend can be one of the most rewarding experiences, where shared challenges forge deeper bonds, and every step together is a step closer to understanding each other. But remember, friendship on the trail requires honesty and respect for each other's limits. If a friend pushes you beyond what you're capable of, it can turn a great adventure into a dangerous outing. Let's venture back to the savage wilderness, where survival is earned, not given. This is Outdoor Disasters. For Sonja Rendell and Marni Sheppeard, their Arthur Pass hike would be disastrous. 4 days before Christmas in 2004, postgraduate physics students Sonja Rendell and Marni Sheppeard left their studies behind for a 3-day hike in Arthur's Pass National Park. Arthur's Pass National Park, located in the southern Alps of New Zealand's South Island, is a rugged and beautiful area known for its dramatic landscapes, diverse wildlife, and challenging hiking trails. Arthur's Pass National Park is known for its challenging terrain and rapidly changing weather conditions, which can create sudden storms and high winds. Hikers and climbers are advised to be well prepared, check weather forecasts, and carry appropriate gear. Initially, it was planned with other classmates to join them for the 3-day hike. But by that Sunday morning, only the 2 women were still eager to go. They met in the city center of Christchurch, where they boarded a shuttle. 2.5 hours later, they were dropped off at the Waimakariri River Bridge a few kilometers south of the Arthur's Pass village. They planned to be out again in 3 days. Shepard was heading west for Christmas with friends at Fox Glacier and had loaded her pack with presents. Rendell had a day of present shopping planned for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day celebrations with her family. Sonia, a 25-year-old city girl, recently split from her boyfriend and is taking this trip to clear her mind. I was heartbroken, so it seemed like a good chance to get away and figure out where my life was going, she reflects. Marnie, at 36, is already a seasoned mountaineer and believes the hike would be something to get Sonia's mind off the breakup. Marnie has always been passionate about the mountains, finding joy in feeling connected to nature. This was set to be Rendell's first major trek. Shepard has tackled various climbs across New Zealand. In comparison, the planned 3-day trek seemed like a walk in the park. The day began clear and sunny, and the pair set out for Carrington Hut, gradually ascending along the riverbed. The conditions were good, so they took their time. This was Shepard's first hike since falling into a crevasse while climbing in the Swiss Alps in August, where she shattered her ankle. That incident marked her first rescue experience. She was airlifted to a hospital, and pins were inserted in her ankle to repair it. It was an ordeal she did not intend to repeat. Carrington Hut, a large shelter catering to adventurers heading in different directions, served as their destination for the night. Though there were other people in the hut, the women, tired from the day's trek, ate a dinner of pasta and mashed potatoes and packed in for the night, ready for their big adventure in the morning. Monday also greeted them with sunshine. The 2 set off just after 6:30 a.m., anticipating a 6-hour hike to Julia Hut. The 2 women hadn't spent much time together socially before now. Sonia and I are quite different in many ways. She's more sociable, more glamorous, Marnie said. The plan was to cover 60 kilometers or 37 miles over 3 days, traversing rugged terrain and mountain passes from the southern Alps to the west coast, with nights spent in hiking shelters. Even in the New Zealand summer, the weather can change suddenly, and Marnie is aware of a storm system approaching, but wasn't supposed to hit for a day or so, and was hoping to finish the hike before the weather turned. For Sonia, the hike presents a steep learning curve, as this is her most ambitious hike yet. They both agree to give the hike a try, knowing they can always turn back if necessary. The journey begins smoothly with the weather holding, but as they round the next bend, they're met with an unexpected sight. A few hours into their hike, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. A large, wide sheet of ice had formed on the rocks, and climbing over it would have required crampons. To the right of the ice was a steep slope of scree, too loose and unstable to climb. On the left, there were bluffs and gullies that seemed challenging even for Shepard, let alone for Rendell, who had no experience navigating such rugged terrain. So, Our options were to go back to Carrington Hut, which neither of us wanted to do, although in hindsight, I probably should have, or to find another route, Sheppeard recalls. They could see the flatter path they wanted to reach above them, and it didn't appear too far away. Marnie consulted the map. It looked like there was a route up over the bluffs and around the ice. It was still very steep and definitely a climbing route, Marnie said. Confident in Sonia's natural ability in the mountains, Marnie believed they could make it. However, the route proved to be tougher and longer than Sheppeard had anticipated. Marnie and Sonia reached a ridge they hoped would take them around the ice, but the plan quickly fell apart. The terrain was impassable without ropes. Between them and the pass was a steep, avalanche-prone gully. Unwilling to abandon the hike, Marnie decided they could climb to another ridge. I was a little surprised by how long the climb seemed, but I completely trusted Marnie's judgment, Sonia recalled. Marnie went first, guiding Sonia and cautioning her to watch for loose scree. What began as a scramble soon turned into a serious climb, and Sonia, a novice, began to feel nervous. The path offered few proper handholds, and she was caught in a cycle of adrenaline and fear, but they had to climb higher to find a way around the ice. Marnie had underestimated the difficulty of the ascent and overestimated Sonia's climbing ability. I was starting to get scared of the terrain, and for a good reason. The drop was steep, and if you slipped, you'd break bones, Sonia remembered. At this point, Marnie realized bringing Sonia into this terrain was a big mistake. Sonia began to panic, pleading with Marnie to go back down. Marnie insisted it was too dangerous to climb back down, urging her to keep moving upward. Going up is safer than going down, just don't look down, she reassured. Despite her instincts, Sonia pressed on, and after 4 hours, they were nearly 330 feet or 200 meters up a near vertical cliff. The summit seemed within reach, but now they faced another problem. The rock above was unstable, and relying on it to hold their weight would mean disaster. Sonia struggled to maintain her grip as loose rocks fell away. Marnie managed to scramble back down to help Sonia, calming her down and guiding her back to a safer spot. Exhausted and shaken, Sonia's strength and confidence were drained. Sonia knew they needed to keep moving, but she had nothing left. The women faced a dilemma. The terrain above was even steeper, but descending was out of the question. Marnie knew they needed a safe place to rest. She spots a small flat patch, the only safe spot on the cliff. It was an absolute relief. I could just sit down and catch my breath, Sonia recalled. Marnie's decision to climb the rock face had nearly ended in disaster. Sonia began to regret putting her trust in her new friend. With only a couple of hours of daylight left, they had to reach the ridge before dark. Sonia was exhausted and hesitant to continue. Marnie agreed to stop for the night, hoping the weather would hold for them to make it to safety in the morning. At 5,000 feet or 1,500 meters above sea level, the temperature dropped quickly. They had brought minimal gear and no warm clothing with the expectation to sleep in hikers' huts. As they settled in, dark clouds began to roll in. Once it started raining, I knew we were in trouble. It was going to be a storm, she said. The bad weather they had hoped to avoid arrived earlier than expected. Their home was a small rocky hole, and it was not comfortable. There were 2 positions the pair could alternate between. One woman would sit on a flat rock and be more comfortable but have her upper body out of the crack, exposed to the wind and rain. The other would be lower under the ground level, completely sheltered but squatting on sharp rocks with almost no space to move. Marnie knows that attempting to climb on wet rocks is deadly, so until the rain stops, they are trapped. Their flimsy rain gear is no match for the downpour, and soon they are soaked to the skin. As the morale of the women plummets, a menacing rumble grows around them. Loosened by the relentless rain, massive boulders begin crashing down, smashing all around them. After what feels like an eternity, the rockfall finally slows. When it stopped, we were absolutely relieved, but we didn't sleep that night. We were too worried about what we would do with the climb the next day, Marnie recalls. At daybreak, the exhausted women are desperate to escape, but the rain is relentless. The rock face, now crumbling and slippery, makes any attempt to climb suicidal. With no mobile phones, they can't call for help. Hoping to lift their spirits, they decide to eat. We thought the rain would pass in 1 or 2 days, so we saw no need to ration food. We still had about a day and a half's worth left, so we ate normally, Marnie explains. As night falls again, the rain continues, and the temperature plunges toward freezing. They start to shiver, and Marnie realizes they are facing a survival situation. Shivering is the body's way of generating heat, but if their core temperatures keep dropping, their organs could shut down, leading to death within a few days. Marnie fears that if they fall asleep, they may slip into a hypothermic coma and never wake up. But with nearly 48 hours of no sleep, their bodies are starting to rebel. Marnie decides to keep talking and be annoying to keep them both awake. After 48 hours in awkward positions, their feet begin to swell dangerously. They made the decision to take off their boots, as there was a real risk that tight boots would cut off circulation. It offers some relief, but Sonia's feet, soaked for days, are in bad shape and at risk of developing trench foot, which could lead to gangrene and blood poisoning. The full impact of Marnie's decision to leave the trail and climb this isolated mountainside begins to unfold. They aren't expected back until Christmas Day, 2 days away, so no one will raise the alarm. Now Marnie doubts they can last that long. By Christmas Eve, Sonia and Marnie have been awake for over 100 hours, and their minds begin to play tricks on them. Sleep deprivation mimics the effects of being drunk, causing hallucinations and uncontrollable emotions. Their simmering resentments finally boil over. Their argument sends adrenaline rushing through their bodies, temporarily staving off sleep, but the strain of staying awake is taking its toll. On Christmas Day, Sonia and Marnie are in no mood to celebrate. Exhausted, numb from the cold, and with only milk powder left to eat, they've been trying to stave off dehydration by drinking rainwater, but remain constantly thirsty. Even in the rain, if they don't drink at least 2 liters of water a day, their blood will thicken, and their brains could begin to shrink, worsening their fatigue. A single glimmer of hope remains. Sonia is expected at her sister Nikki's house for Christmas, and she's sure her family will be worried about her absence. At Nikki's house, Sonia's no-show has caused concern. Sonia's family, accustomed to her unpredictability, isn't initially worried, but her reputation for being unreliable now works against her. By late afternoon, Nikki's initial annoyance had turned to concern. She drives to the National Park's ranger station to report Sonia missing, but she only knows a little about her sister's route. Eventually, the rangers discover the women never arrived at the hut they were heading for. 5 days into their ordeal, they are officially declared missing. Meanwhile, Sonia and Marnie believe the alarm has been raised and that help is on the way. Wanting to join in the holiday spirit and ease their intense thirst, they decide to open a bottle of wine Marnie had brought as a Christmas gift. We knew we shouldn't drink alcohol without water, but we were going to have a bottle of wine on Christmas Day. On the frozen ledge, Sonia and Marnie waited for rescue. They know alcohol will worsen their thirst, but the warmth from the wine is comforting for now. However, banking on a quick rescue turns out to be a mistake. The rescuers have only a vague idea of where to search in the vast wilderness. As the hours pass, the women's chances of survival dwindle. 16 kilometers away, down in the valley, park rangers launch rescue helicopters and send out foot patrols to search for the women. But with an area spanning hundreds of kilometers, the odds of finding them are slim. On the ledge, Sonia and Marnie regret drinking the wine, which has only made their dehydration worse. Strong winds make it impossible to collect rainwater. Even though there was torrential rain, we couldn't collect any of it. It was always at an angle we couldn't reach, Marnie explains. The only way we could get water was by sucking it out of our sleeping bags. It tasted disgusting, but getting germs from the water was the least of our worries, Sonia adds. The women remain stranded on the ledge for the 7th day, with no break in the rainstorm. Just as they begin to lose hope, they hear the sound they've been longing for, a helicopter. But the thick fog and relentless bad weather make them invisible to the search teams. After more than a week on the rain-lashed ledge, the women's feet are becoming seriously infected, and their hopes for rescue grow dimmer. Both women developed trench foot, which had killed the nerves in their feet, leaving them completely numb. Even if the weather cleared, climbing on their damaged feet would be nearly impossible. Since Sonia's sister Nikki raised the alarm, park rangers have spent 4 days searching both on foot and by air, but there is no sign of the women. After 8 days of relentless rain, the rain ceased and the women were feeling elated. But it quickly turns to despair as the rain is replaced by snow, deepening their ordeal. It felt like sitting in a bathtub of ice cubes, Sonia describes. The sub-zero temperatures bring the threat of hypothermia even closer, and by morning, Sonia's exposed, swollen feet are frostbitten. Desperate for hydration, Sonia eats snow, knowing it could dangerously lower her core body temperature. I knew I shouldn't eat snow, but I thought, what the hell, I was desperate. We were beyond desperate at that stage, she reasoned. On the 9th day without sleep, the weather alternates between snow and freezing rain, and they can no longer resist the urge to sleep. Suddenly, they glimpse a patch of blue sky, the best sight they've seen in days. Realizing no rescue is coming, Marnie and Sonia decide to take matters into their own hands. I didn't want to be caught in another storm. I was incredibly weak and tired, but we were determined to climb out no matter what, Sonia says. Marnie agrees, stating, if we died trying to climb out, that was better than dying in that crevice. Back at the ranger station, authorities call off the search for the women's bodies. However, Nikki and Marnie's sister Gina couldn't bring themselves to give up, one of the helicopter pilots. Sergeant Dan Harker takes pity on them and offers to fly them over the wilderness to say goodbye. The plan was to take the family members up in the helicopter to show them the terrain that the ground search teams were covering. It was a task he was glad to have volunteered for. When they set out, the morale among the families and the search coordination team was very low, although no one said it openly. While Nikki and Gina are told their sisters are likely dead, they can't stop themselves from scanning the landscape for any sign of their sisters. Meanwhile, Marnie and Sonia prepare to climb. They haven't slept in 10 days, and their frostbitten feet are numb and swollen to the point of cracking. That morning, they watched the Iroquois helicopter for an hour as it swept across the valley below and gradually circled the peaks around them. We kept following it with our eyes, saying, come higher, and then it did, Marnie recalled. Against all odds, the helicopter spots Sonia and Marnie among hundreds of square kilometers of wilderness, and Sonia and Marnie spot the helicopter as well. The two women were laughing, crying, and overjoyed as they were finally rescued. The relief they felt was indescribable. 7 nights in the cold, wet mountains is a long time for anyone to survive with limited supplies, Harker noted. Later that day, he and members of his search team were scheduled to hand over their duties to another team and take a much-needed break. So finding them couldn't have come at a better time. I would have hated to miss this. So often my job ends with telling families we found bodies. This is the best feeling, Harker recalled. Within 40 minutes, the missing women were winched out of their week-long ordeal and given a quick checkup in the chopper. As the chopper landed outside the visitors' center at Arthur's Pass Village, they were greeted by overjoyed family and friends. Marnie looked over at her sister Gina and said with regret, "It's all my fault, I was the cause of all this trouble." But Gina replied, "It doesn't matter. You're safe. That's all." Sonja Rendell burst into tears trying to hug her family all at once. After being examined at the base, the pair were airlifted to Christchurch Hospital, where they underwent a more thorough medical evaluation and were kept overnight for observation. Rendell and Sheppeard had minor injuries but were otherwise in good shape. They're sodden, hungry, and tired. They have minor injuries, but their level of fitness means that they have come out of it well. One has frostnip on her feet. Both have a lot of soft tissue injuries, infected scratches, and they are swollen in the limbs. Miraculously, both emerged in good health. 2 days later, their feet were still swollen, and wrecked nerves in the women's feet took 3 weeks to grow back. Sonia never climbed again, but Marnie returned to the mountains 10 months later. "I'm pretty sure I promised Sonia I wouldn't put anyone else through that, but I still love the mountains," Marnie says. "I'm definitely more careful now about who I take with me." Despite everything, the two women remained friends. "I probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Marnie," Sonia says. "It was definitely her strength that got both of us through." Marnie went on to become a renowned researcher and professor in theoretical physics, but her true passion was always exploring the mountains. In a strange twist of fate, Marnie would disappear in the same mountains of Arthur's Pass, 17 years after her previous ordeal there. Recently, Marni Sheppeard had been living in poverty and homelessness. After spending time on the streets of Auckland in 2019, she moved into a city mission shelter to quote-unquote continue her research. She was last seen in November 2020, believed to be heading into the Arthur's Pass region for another tramping expedition. She was reported missing in January, and police focused their search on the same area where she was found in 2003. The self-proclaimed Queen of the South tweeted in November that she was heading for the mountains. In March 2021, human remains were found during a search on the west coast of Arthur's Pass National Park and confirmed to be those of Marni Sheppeard. The remains, discovered in the Rolleston River area. Marnie's life ended tragically as she struggled with homelessness and mental decline. Many of her colleagues described her as a tormented figure who ultimately perished in the mountains she loved. She left behind a legacy of 10 scientific publications and a blog containing over 300 lessons in theoretical physics, which remains accessible to this day. Sonia and Marnie's story is one of adventure, courage, and the unbreakable bond forged in the face of adversity. What began as a simple hiking trip turned into a harrowing battle for survival, testing their endurance and spirit against the unforgiving forces of nature. Through their ordeal, they found strength in each other, pushing through exhaustion, fear, and despair with sheer determination. Though their lives took different directions, their shared experience remained a powerful testament to their resilience and friendship. In the end, their story serves as both an inspiration and a reminder. The mountains are a place of beauty and wonder, but also of peril and unpredictability. Knowing one's limits, respecting the power of nature, and finding strength in each other are what keep us alive. Marnie and Sonia's story is not just about surviving the wild, it is about embracing life's challenges, learning from them, and holding on to the bonds that sustain us through even the darkest of times. When on a hiking trip, know your boundaries and don't be afraid to speak up when a path seems too steep or a challenge too great. The mountains are unforgiving. They don't care about friendship or pride. A true friend will respect your limits and listen to your concerns, not drag you into terrain you aren't prepared for. Trust your instincts, not just your friend, because out there your safety should never be compromised by someone else's ambition. Every step you take beyond your boundaries is a step closer to disaster. In the wilderness, overconfidence kills as quickly as inexperience. If you refuse to speak up when a trail feels too dangerous, you risk turning a shared adventure into a tragic mistake. Remember, the mountains are indifferent to your ego, and they will not forgive ignorance or stubbornness. True strength isn't in proving yourself to a friend. It's in knowing when to stop, when to turn back, and when to say, "I can't do this." It takes far more courage to admit you're not ready than to plunge ahead unprepared. But hiking with a friend can also be a profound journey of connection and discovery. The trails you navigate together, the challenges you overcome, and the quiet moments shared in nature can create bonds that last a lifetime. With the right partner, the wilderness becomes a place of growth and joy. Choose a friend who respects your boundaries, who listens to your fears, and who values your safety over their ambition. In those moments, you will find not just the beauty of the mountains, but the true meaning of friendship, one step at a time. Adventure is meant to elevate you, not break you. Choose your companions wisely, and make sure the trail you take together is one where everyone can avoid an outdoor disaster. If you've made it this far, please consider clicking those subscribe and like buttons. Want more outdoor disasters content? Check out these videos I believe you'll enjoy. Thank you for watching.